Do you believe art can change the world? So do I. On this show, we meet artists whose work is doing just that. Welcome to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. If you've been listening to my podcast, then you know that I went on a break after the last episode. But I have such a timely episode, so I'm releasing it now. Earth Day is right around the corner. People from all around the world will be joining their communities to take action in support of the environment and to raise awareness of the need to care for this planet we all share. The first Earth Day was in 1970, and artists played a very significant role then, and they continue to be a huge part of Earth Day every year. I had the opportunity to speak with Evan Raskin, the National Campaign Manager for EarthDay.org. He represents the organization at environmental summits all over the world and speaks with everybody, from political leaders to community leaders, the people who are really coordinating local activities that benefit all of us. Evan sat down to share more about the role of artists in Earth Day's history. We talk about this year's theme, Our Power, Our Planet, and how we can all lean into that power. If by any chance you listen to this episode after Earth Day has passed, Evan reminds us that every day will present us with a chance to contribute to the care of our planet. You want to know how you can really help me keep this show going? Follow me on your favorite listening app. So easy, right? And if you really want to give the show a boost, leave me a 5-star rating or review. Hi, Evan. I'm so glad that you are on Art Heals All Wounds today. I know a little bit about you, but I'm hoping in this interview that we can find out more about you, but also the organization Earth Day that you work for.
Yeah, certainly. It's such a pleasure to be here. We're exactly a month out from Earth Day today, and momentum is really building. So this is an exciting time for me and the organization.
And just to let the audience know that by the time this comes out, it will not be a month out, but that's where we are today. You're the National Campaign Manager for Earth Day. I'd love to know more about that role. What does that mean to be the National Campaign Manager?
As the National Campaign Manager, my role is to make sure that we're unifying this incredibly diverse movement of people who are contributing on Earth Day to a better environmental future. It means that I am charged with fostering a platform where people from any background, both in terms of demographic and geography, are able to join our platform and find something that is local, relevant, and authentic to how they want to contribute to the environmental movement. That involves building the partnerships that will help bring Earth Day to life and making sure that in the way in which we communicate in the public, that we are reaching anyone and everyone who can make a difference.
Right. And I think you deal with politicians as well. Is that true?
That is true as well. And that extends throughout Earth Day and the rest of the year as well. I work with elected officials at the city, state, and national level, and occasionally at the international level with foreign head of state or UN minister here and there. The bulk of my work, at least my favorite part of the work, happens in local communities, working alongside mayors and council people, the people who really feel the pulse of their communities and have the greatest possibility to directly impact the quality of the air, land, water, and climate that we depend on.
Well, I have so many questions about Earth Day and Earth Day's work. But before we talk about that, I would just love to know a little bit more about you. I've read that you're also an artist. Is that true?
That is indeed correct. Outside of my work at Earth Day, I am a musician, a painter. I even do a little bit of poetry, just put out my first book recently. Like many artists, I like to wear all the hats that I can in the creative space.
Wow, congratulations on your book. When you're talking about all these different things, I'm just curious, and if you don't have an answer for this, you don't have to answer it. Between the music, the visual art, the writing, which one of those is kind of the one you go to when you really need a release from something that's bothering you?
That is such a wonderful question. And for me, ultimately, while all of these mediums are able to provide what you've described, I find that the deepest impact is found through music.
Mm.
I tend to see the world through a rhythmic context. The cycles of nature and astronomy, they follow this rhythm of light and physics, and life as we know it, all plays along to, in a way, a symphony. And each of us as individuals are playing our own part within that symphony. And so I find that that rhythmic element of music allows me to shed away whatever dissonance I may be experiencing and find myself in greater harmony, to use a musical term, to describe how it brings me balance and centers me.
Mm, that is such a great way of putting the role of music for you. And now I'm curious, sort of, what are the themes of your artwork, whether it's music, visual art, or poetry?
Well, to expound upon that point, really a key purpose for me in communicating my vision of the world through art is to help people understand that ever-flowing rhythm all around them. To be able to understand who we are beyond individual perspective, to understand the role that we play within communities, societies, within ecosystems, within the planet and the cosmos, to better understand that as a constituent part of our reality, there is much to be gained both in terms of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being, but also in our capacity to be able to provide for others, to be able to make a contribution to a more harmonious future. The way that I see it is that art can open up your perspective to other ways of thinking. It can open up your perspective to the way in which others think, the way that others feel. Ultimately, at the end of the day, to me, art is a form of communicating my unique perspective and the ways in which I hope that my perspective can help other people, both on a personal and interpersonal basis.
Mm. There's a word you used earlier, this word dissonance, which I think we're all being we're all experiencing that dissonance, or most of us. I'm not going to say all, but most of us are experiencing various levels of that dissonance every day. And I love what you're describing as your own practice enabling you. I don't know if you, I mean, I guess you can't get rid of it really, but you can actually change your perspective to where you are engaging with this harmony that you talk about.
Right, exactly. For me, that harmony is really found by allowing the process of creating art to connect me to, some artists call it like a source, for instance. And so be able to shift my perspective from an individual to part of an interconnected whole, in the same way that we understand ecology to function. And when I'm able to do this, it allows me to create work that I hope at least can inspire the audience to engage more mindfully with nature and contribute to a future in which all life forms can thrive. And as you said, Pam, we live in a time where people often find dissonance. A lot of artistic work talks about this element of modernity, the way in which the means of living that we have in our modern society differ from the way in which our biology has evolved. And I find that cognizance of that allows us to be able to better manage its symptoms and allow us to find authenticity in a modern environment that may be foreign to our biology. It also, as I mentioned earlier, helps us support each other as well. I think it's really important in my work that where I can, there is a call to civic action, pieces that can call upon the audience to not necessarily shed dissonance, but rather pay attention to its sources and how we can address them. Where is there perhaps an imbalance or injustice in society, and how can we take action to heal the world? I find these themes become particularly present in my music, but also in certain visual pieces, such as collage art that I've made out of various pieces of creative work that are distributed at protests around DC. The activist community thrives on art, and I don't think that we'd be where we are today without it.
So I'm really curious, when did you personally feel that itch to start making art? How did that arise for you?
Family exposure was really crucial to my creative development in certain ways. My mother, she was a hairdresser on major motion pictures, about over 50 of them, including a Best Picture winner. And my father, he was the lead in Cirque du Soleil. He was on Broadway and most recently a internationally recognized hospital clown performing for sick children as well as elderly dementia patients. And this work, it, for one, of course, inspired me in a purely artistic context, showing that people around me are capable of creating something beautiful, and surely I am as well. But I also found that this work also showed the capacity for art to make a social difference as well. For instance, my father, as a hospital clown, I could see that his art was making a real difference in people's lives, helping them through some of the hardest things they've ever experienced. He also has taken his work on stage and translated it into corporate consulting, showing how the skills of an actor can make you more successful as a negotiator and as an influencer. And to me, this showed that one of the powers that art has is to be able to draw influence, to be able to sway the hearts and minds of those who may be able to implement the vision carried by your art.
But your path, I mean, obviously you didn't follow in that types of art. So, specifically to perform music, to engage in visual art and writing, when did you feel called to do those things?
Oh, it's such a cascade of moments that it almost happened without even realizing it. And I found that in terms of certain mediums, all it took was the slightest push. I'd never thought of myself as someone who was particularly adept at visual art, but for my college graduation requirements, I did need to take a fine art course. And of course, that was of interest to me as someone who already had a bit of a creative background. And it felt like an opportunity to explore something new. And I found that just taking a Art 100 class in painting allowed for me to see that just the act of doing provided greater results than I would have expected. And of course, it's never about the results anyway. It's about the way that we feel in making the work in the form of raw expression. That's what really matters. But seeing a finished product that you're proud of will always motivate you to go further. And I think so many people who would not consider themselves artists believe, for really no good reason, in my personal opinion, that if they tried, they wouldn't get the results that they're seeking. But I think that there's a lot of latent potential in people out there to be able to express their creativity. And I think that the world would probably be a healthier place if everybody who may have written themselves off just picked up an instrument or a pencil or a paintbrush, whatever calls to them in that moment. Don't worry about what it may look like because sooner than later, with just a little bit of time and practice, the vision that you feel within yourself will become manifest.
I agree with that so much. And I especially agree with this idea you're putting forward that it's not about the results, it's about the process. I think that you're right, that society would be much healthier.
Yes, and there's actually some science that is pointing towards society being healthier when they express themselves creatively. It was found recently, right, that even just a few minutes of creative engagement per day leads to all these amazing cognitive benefits. And that carries over into every other aspect of society as well. When we take care of ourselves in terms of mental health, that allows us to achieve everything that we hope to achieve.
I just interviewed Daisy Fancourt, who is one of the leading scientists in that, and she just released a book called Art Cure, which the findings are exactly as you're describing them. Like the prescription of a daily creative practice, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes a day, could do you a world of good.
Yeah, and what I found so amazing is that those benefits were just the same, no matter how good you are, for lack of a better term. That even people making so-called bad art, even though of course we know there's no such thing, even the people who weren't necessarily proud of their work still ended up receiving that same cognitive benefit.
It is amazing. You know what you're talking about here, this drive to find yourself in a more healthy space does bleed over into looking around at our planet and suddenly becoming aware of how there's a health of an ecosystem at stake here. So I think that they are all interrelated. So when did you become involved with Earth Day? How did that happen?
Oh, wow. So my involvement with Earth Day goes right about all the way back to graduating from college. I had just finished an internship in which I helped the British Embassy of DC phase out single-use plastics from its operations. And I was really looking for something where I could continue to make an impact institutionally, but with a background already rooted in art and especially performance art. And that really led me to Earth Day. They had an opening in which I could actually be the voice of college campuses in the Earth Day movement. And that was a wonderful opportunity to leverage the systems and communities that I had come to know so well over those previous 4 years. And that experience built up, I took on progressively more responsibility until eventually I landed at the role of national campaign manager, where I could use that voice both externally as one of the public faces of Earth Day, but also within rooms of high impact advocacy, such as with political leaders and other stakeholders that can really drive widespread change.
Mm. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about Earth Day's history. And especially, I'm interested to know the role of artists in that history.
Earth Day has gone back now, wow, 56 years to 1970. In 1970, Earth Day found itself at the pinnacle of this unique cultural moment where really the drumbeat of society was one that was marching towards cultural and social evolution. This was when so many of the most important protest movements in American history happened, from the anti-war movement to the civil rights movement. And the environmental movement, much in the same way, was able to mobilize through the power of art. We had musicians that were narrativizing the so-called struggle that all of these groups are going through, um, spreading the message of why people were getting active and taking to the streets, inspiring others to join them. The same was reflected in art. This was a time in which modern movements were evolving at a rapid rate, at a time where cultures were intersecting in such a way that new forms of creative expression were arising, allowing for people to express their social and political views in new and unique ways that ended up resonating broadly. And that really comes through when you listen to the music that was in the zeitgeist during the time of the first Earth Day. You listen to the sounds that were being created in the late 1960s, and they imagine this almost idyllic world, one in which there is environmental and social harmony. In a way, it almost represents what was missing in the Silent Spring. For those who aren't familiar, it's a seminal work of literature that on a academic basis helped form the basis of the environmental movement. When one author asked herself, "Where have all the birds gone? The spring is silent." Music, in a way, helped us remember what we had lost and dream of a better future. And I don't think that the momentum that was built for the first Earth Day or for any movement that's changed the world could exist without those visionaries creating this tableau that everybody else could see and imagine themselves within. We have to dream of a better world in order for us to live in one.
That's so beautifully put. And I think that you're kind of naming the role of artists, but I've come to believe that everyone is born an artist and that I'm going to go back to this word dissonance, that if you can get through the dissonance, then you can also dream of that better world.
Absolutely. I've never known another way to do it. And yes, I absolutely agree that every one of us is born an artist. And I think the role of those who already see themselves as such is to help everybody understand that innate quality within themselves.
Mm, that is so true.
All of this momentum led to more and more people joining the movement until Earth Day 1970 actually ended up being the largest protest mobilization in American history.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was such an important moment for us, not only for the sake of showing that individual Americans care about the environment, but because of the practical applications that that led to. Seeing this huge mobilization of millions upon millions of people out in the streets on Earth Day 70 actually ended up leading to the foundation of environmental policy as well as we know it. Coming out of the first Earth Day, we had the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency, all three being really key pillars that have defined environmental protection in the United States until this very day. All of those started in 1970 and evolved over the next couple of years, forming into this really bedrock policy that ultimately has saved countless lives, restored numerous species, and allowed for a much better environmental future today than we otherwise would have experienced.
Wow. I had no idea that that was the catalyst for all of this change. I know that your theme this year is Our Power, Our Planet. I'd love for you to talk about that theme. What does it mean? Why did the organization choose that theme? What does it mean to you as in your role of the organization? And what does it mean to you personally?
You know, Our Power, Our Planet is one of my favorite themes we've had at Earth Day during my time there. And what makes it so special to me is how universal this is. You've asked me to describe its meaning through a number of different lenses, and this is exactly our intention. For this to be something of meaning to every stakeholder and institution in society. For us, our power, our planet really means to not only use our power for the so-called personal environmental footprint, but to contribute collectively and collaboratively towards the solutions that will lead to a more sustainable and equitable society. For us, our power, our planet is all about showing that each of us who is in the audience today, each of us who is living their lives and hearing about environmental challenges, they can often feel so much bigger than any one of us can actually do something about. But this theme is there to remind you that when we all use our power, then our planet will end up benefiting from those results.
In there, is there something about what it means to you personally? Let's pretend you don't work for Earth Day. What would that mean to you?
Hmm. For me, it means that I have the power to make a difference in my own community. For me to know that I am not just an anonymous citizen, but that I am a member of a family, of a neighborhood, that I can be successful in contributing my time to supporting others. And I find that in my life, when I have the greatest sense of meaning, it's when I am taking the time to be of service, not only in my role with a nonprofit, but also just as a general member of the community. For me, when I hear Our Power, Our Planet, stepping away from my role as national campaign manager into just the lens of Evan, pure and simple, it means that I don't necessarily have to become jaded by everything that we see in the world that we wish was different. That I know that if I am assured of my power to make a difference and I act with that assurance, then I will be joined by other people who share that confidence with me, and that it's not only on me alone, it's our power that we use collectively to solve the challenges that may be affecting us personally, may be affecting us societally, but ultimately is something that can only be changed when we all work together.
I'm glad you said that part about feeling jaded. I would add to that feelings of hopelessness, especially with this current administration. It feels like there's a race to dismantle a lot of these organizations that you talked about that were formed after the initial Earth Day, or if not to dismantle them, to at least twist them or make them a little bit toothless in terms of performing the role that they were meant to do. And it is easy to feel jaded or hopeless. And it sounds to me like what you're talking about is starting with the individual, but looking to become part of some sort of community or collective action that contains so much more power than just me, you as an individual.
Yes, exactly. And I think that it's really interesting that you've brought up the current political landscape that we find ourselves within. And that's part of why Our Power, Our Planet has taken the shape that it has, is because we don't necessarily even need to collect our power towards overcoming this great dismantling of action at the federal level, when there are also so many other additional stakeholders that we can be reaching and engaging with along the way to resist that dismantlement and make sure that even in their absence, we are still a stable and sustainable society. And is something that I think led us to this. I mean, to put it in the words of the immortal Fred Rogers, right? You look for the helpers. There are so many willing voices in society, nonetheless. Here in DC, we tend to really look towards national politics, and it's easy to sometimes think that that is all that sways society. But as I mentioned earlier, I really love looking at local leadership, looking at all of the different people who remain committed towards this work, or at least are willing to lend an open ear. And when it comes to the individual implementing the ethos of Our Power, Our Planet, these are very much within reach. Just you and a couple of close allies can make a difference in your immediate neighborhood and community, that you can make a difference within your town or city. Uh, to engage in local advocacy is, I think, something really special because of that shared stakeholder nature that everybody has, including your local officials.
Mm.
Um, I really believe that this kind of work starts locally and becomes global, and we often lose that when we look at the inaction or the destruction caused by figures that are leading at a national level. Yet there's so much good still happening in the world, so much power that's being used both in those subnational public sectors and in the private sector. Something that I think really gives me hope and shows that collectively we are using our power to the betterment of our planet is seeing that for now, the last, it's probably getting close to 25 months now. Solar power has been the leading source of new electricity generated in the United States. It shows that there are so many people out there that see that there is a real benefit to using our power for sustainability. We've reached a point now where the train has left the station. Our power has built within the environmental movement in certain ways where it really can't be stopped. Certain ideas around what we need to do as a future collectively in order to both survive and to thrive, I believe, are now widespread. And this is, I think, another really powerful way in which art can help change the world. Certain forms of art, such as literature, especially in the realm of science fiction, but also across so many other artistic mediums, they depict either an idealized version of the future or perhaps a dystopian warning of what inaction could lead to. And we see increasingly that in our collective visions of the future, depicted through art, certain themes, certain things that have almost become a given, that one day our societies will be fully driven by electric vehicles and renewable energy. At this point, it's become a matter of when rather than if. And for so many people, when asking the question of when, that time is now.
Mm.
That's one of the great things that we see about art. This is the whole role that it played within the Earth Day 1970 movement and continues to play in modern social movements today. When we use our power successfully, it enables other people to use their power as well. And within this context, I would say that it's our power as artists to be the voice of that change, to be able to inspire other people to create and spread the message further, or to inspire others to take action. This is what's so important for us. It's the idea of advocacy, not only to elected officials and those who can affect change broadly. They certainly have the power and need to use it in accordance with the people, but also to make sure that we are stepping forward into the future with the confidence that we can collectively change things for the better. I think that the role that artists are playing in the modern movement is perhaps more important than it's ever been, living in the information age where there is just so much saturation. A quality piece of creative work can cause people to tune in a way that they otherwise would not have. And we see this in such a wide range of applications, from filmmaking, where climate change and other environmental topics are really reaching the mainstream through these AAA productions. We see it showing up in environmental spaces themselves. For instance, a lot of my own work that I've done on found objects and collage art started from visiting COP27, the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, where global artists from around the world were bringing installations made out of pollution that had been accumulated in their home countries. And we've really seen within our own work at earthday.org that art can and does make a difference. Every year, we create the official Earth Day poster that creates a visual for the movement and something to latch onto. We also have an entire Artists for the Earth program that is designed to give a platform to creatives who are creating art that calls and inspires people to action. And one of my favorite pieces of work at earthday.org that we've taken on was this project called Global Halt 2020. It was this huge stealth street art project that we took on in 2020 for Earth Day, where 500 artists around the world participated in this campaign by painting murals protesting climate change in their local communities, all done more or less under the cover of darkness, so to speak, and unveiled on Earth Day. Uh,
Wow.
and I find that mural work and street art on a personal basis is one of the greatest ways in which art can shape a society. I find that here in DC, where mural work and socially active forms of graffiti are commonplace throughout the streets. And it really gives a unfiltered public discourse in a way that few other mediums can.
Mm.
It's a true public forum in which people are sharing their ideas, and those who are passing by in their everyday lives are exposed to those ideas.
Mm.
Yeah, and so We found that the Global Halt Project was this really excellent opportunity for us to be able to put this message into a permanent context within communities everywhere. That way, the average person walking to work who may be able to affect change in that job, passing that climate change mural every day, might have something to think about in terms of the impact that they could either cause for better or for worse.
Where can we see images of that? Is there a collection of them?
Yes, there is indeed. In fact, earthday.org is the host to one of them. You can find it on our page dedicated to the Global Halt Project. And you can also find these images listed on social media platforms using the hashtag EarthDay2020Halt.
Mm, wonderful. Well, before we sign off, I think it would be really helpful for anyone, not just artists, to know how we can get involved. What could we do this Earth Day? What could we do the other 364 days a year? And you've talked about looking for collective action, but I'm wondering if you have specific ideas for us.
The very first thing that I would recommend as far as how to use your power for our planet this Earth Day is, of course, to visit earthday.org. We are supporting thousands and thousands of environmental events happening throughout the month of April, Earth Month as we like to know it, that are happening in your community. If you go to earthday.org's Earth Day 2026 page, you will find our map there used by millions of people to find and participate in Earth Day events. This is one of the easiest ways to get involved. There are certainly people who are organizing volunteers in your community, and we want our platform to help connect you with those people. But of course, you don't necessarily need to find someone else leading a volunteer movement in your community. There are plenty of ways in which you can start the conversation yourself. For so many, organizing a community cleanup is a really easy inroad to the environmental movement. In fact, that was one of the ways in which I got started myself. I think it's also very important that Earth Day as a catalyst, you spoke to the other 364 days a year. We try to use Earth Day as a way of making every day forward to the next Earth Day a little bit more sustainable. And a great way to do that is to bring this into the conversations that you regularly have with your community. For instance, if you are a student or a teacher, dedicating some time in your classroom to talk about how you as a class or as a school can take action together to achieve greater sustainability. It's a great way to do this. We often see faith communities doing the same thing, bringing the congregation together to talk about what can we do to decarbonize the house of worship and make it so that each of us in the congregation contribute to a healthier, more sustainable society. You can reflect this across really anything that you are involved in, even if it's just your family. Starting these conversations is the first step to how we change things for the better.
Evan, thank you so much. Both your story and then how it joins this larger story of Earth Day are really inspiring to me. And I know that other people listening to this will also be inspired. Do you have any personal sites where there's your music or art that you would like people to engage with if they're curious?
Yes, of course. You can find me on Spotify as simply Raskin. And as of the moment, my visual art is mostly found in galleries and exhibitions around the greater Washington region. However, I am hoping to be able to share this more broadly in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to be on the show.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Thank you so much to Evan Raskin for coming on the show to talk about the relationship between artists and Earth Day. I'm really happy that Evan shared his own journey with art as well. I'll leave links in the show notes to earthday.org's website, as well as a link to Evan's music on Spotify. I hope that for all of us, this opportunity to participate with community on Earth Day serves as an inspiration to lean into our power for the benefit of our planet. Thanks for listening today. I'm not using social media right now, but you can always reach me at my website, arthealsallwoundspodcast.com. And if you feel like it, follow my Substack for updates on new episodes. Although I'm still officially on break, listen for new episodes in just a couple of weeks. The music you've heard in this podcast was by Quetzal and Lobo Loco.